Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is László Vele. I welcome all of you at today's Tex session. One of our first session and presentation will be about the science behind the AI. And let me introduce our presenter, Mr. Johannes Bernhard. He's a CEO of Bonn Consulting, whose extensive experience in guiding enterprise to AI implementation. So the floor is yours. Please go on with your presentation.
Thank you, Bernhard. Thank you very much. What we are going to talk about today is a few simple things. What is behind AI? We saw the lecture given by the CEO of the bank where different models of AI are introduced. I would like to dive a little bit into that and see what's under the bonnet. What is it really? The thing that is confusing to a lot of people is that AI is much more than what we can see at the very moment. The big LLMs that are out there, the big things that are in the advertisings, and of course the fake news that are being created, that's the things that you can see. What really happens is that your smartphones are using it in extensive and vast ways. And companies producing them are making a lot of effort to create better user experience and provide new functionality, relying heavily on complex algorithms and heuristics, and of course, trying to understand the recognition behind your user interactions. So GPT and the large language models, I'm not going to phase on because that's right over the news with everyone. I think that should be self-explaining. But the dive into the technologies being used, that's the thing that we're going to talk about. And we'll go in with a question, what is it really? So we have AI, which allows a machine to recreate or create patterns that it has learned from human behavior. We have machine learning, that experience-based learning into new actions, but on a limited scale. And you have deep learnings, which allow a machine to identify a task that is before it and to use large and complex data in order to understand what it is doing. That's a lot of where the fun is. In the field of AI, certain types, weak and strong or general AI or generative AI. The funny thing is that a lot of people are focusing on the generative parts of it, whereas in the industry, people are leaning towards shallow learnings to solve tasks that are right at hand. One of the examples is that German government, together with a United Nations initiative, has tried for how do we understand agriculture and digitalization? Because every farmer who uses large products like John Deere, Claas, and whatsoever has GPS in order to do his drilling. So nice, lean drillings. The neighbors are not complaining anymore. This is all sweet. But is there an effect that we can predict harvesting, that we can predict humidity, that fungus, insects, and whatnot are based upon in order to make the farmer's life easier? And this is where deep learning is not helping you. You need to be able to define a task, to define an outcome, and to allow the machine to interact within these patterns. So this is why the so-called weak AI is so important for a number of use cases, whereas the big publicity, of course, is in the strong AI cases where the big money is, where the big energy consumption is, but still where the question is open, what is the outcome? What will be the benefits for a society in the larger case? And when you look at the number of initiatives like the French-based AI model or the Germans with Aleph Alpha, who are trying to understand the effects that an AI can have in science, in helping to explore things that we haven't seen before, to understand patterns better than a human could do that. So that's what we're talking about. Why is it so important? Because we're trying to understand where it all comes from. Everything on that page is about pattern recognition. That is where it all comes from. Most of you have been reading the papers that were brought out in the early 80s, where people were dreaming about the mathematical models of what AI can do, and they were all true. The big misfortune they had was they were living in a time where computer capacity was not there to give proof to their theories. And unfortunately, a lot of them didn't live long enough to see it coming. But it came exactly that way. So they were right on the one hand. And secondly, it must not be forgotten that all that rah-rah on the advertising world, it's all about pattern. With 99.9%, everything that achieves a goal in the artificial world is based on that mechanism. So when you try to converse that understanding into deep learning efforts, you will see that it is quite similar to it. The basic thinking is still on the pattern side. The only thing is that you create more layers to make a machine understand a very complex task. The overall philosophical principle behind that is still the same, and I find that fascinating. With all that work done, we are talking about pre-trained deep learning models. And with that, we come to the dangers of it. What happens is confusing to a lot of people. It's all about statistics, stochastic heuristics. So if you take the time and effort to develop a mathematical understanding of what you're doing, your life becomes much easier. So, but I don't want to drive into the key concepts of it because that's only for the connoisseurs. But I would rather go and talk to you about what are the types that we could use and that we're working with. How do we facilitate the learning aspects? The learning aspects are indeedly the supervised learning. That's how we started in the 90s, even with trying for risk management and analysis, where we tried to form very simple neuronal networks. That was all we could do because we didn't have the computing power. When a risk pops up, a road is blocked, what is the effect on a whole supply chain? We have been refining these concepts until today. These applications have gone through numerous renovations, but they are still running on the same patterns, which is totally amazing. So that shows you that once you, and that is one important learning, which MIT has put as their standard for the survival capability of an AI-based application. When the incoming variables allow you for a certainty of about 80% of your prediction, it is very likely that you will reach the target you come from. If the quality goes down to 50%, there is a major risk. If it is below 50%, don't try for it. The probability that you fail is maximizing, not on a linear, but on a progressive curve. That's when things become very difficult. With that, we're with training, because now we have the possibilities to really go through patterns that allow us to tell the machine in which direction to go. And of course, collecting labeled data, training a model, using these data, and evaluate the model again and again with the learnings that we have. That's how we do the job. Unsupervised learning basically is the same. What's different is that the machine does it on its own. We even go that far that we ask a machine to form a task. We just put data in front of it and say, find something useful to do with it. Is a lot of fun, but the economic value of it might still be coming or not. But it's a lot of fun. Again, when you look at what can be done on the combination of supervised and unsupervised learning, where you go into the reinforcement patterns, that is where you all remember the chess or Go parades where Kasparov was losing against a machine. And nowadays, no human can win a game of Go against a machine anymore, which is really a bummer. But that's what it is about reinforcement learning. What we learn here is how important the agent pattern is. What's the purpose? What are you doing with it? And if you're trying to think from an end, you might come to totally different outcomes in your journey throughout the interpretation of the data. It's all about how we get meaningful data and insights into a use case that we want to achieve. The model is simple. It all follows the pattern that I've described already, but it lays the basis for neural networks. Why is that so important? Because the understanding of the statistical background and the quality of the data gives you an outlook on the way a neural network works. So the intake of the data, the layers that do the job behind that, and the output layers have to interact on the basis of the data that you give them. With that, we try in a number of use cases to understand the bias that a system necessarily evolves, but we don't understand why, which is absolutely funny. And I'm really keen to understand. One day we will understand it. And I'm really looking forward to know what's really behind that. One of the answers we strongly believe is in the field of the perceptrons. Perceptrons are copies of biological cellular processes which are copied into the binary world. I remember the discussion that we had about quantum computing and DNA-based computing, which still is not over. So that will be fun as well. But the concept of how we're doing it is a copy of what we understand about the human brain. And this is about the input signal, the weights, the bias, and the activation functions that are there. This is neurobiology, not a mathematical concept. So that's why I'm so intrigued about it. When you try to understand that functionality and the mathematical graph behind that, you will find that there really is use behind that, because you can put these neural networks and perceptrons into transforming networks and large language models. This was the whole mathematical basis about that. So if you're now trying to translate a how are you in a como estás, which is a quite simple task, from a mathematical perspective, it is not, funnily enough, because input, transformer, and output data are really complex. And this, of course, is not a really bad task to perform. But if you do that with your dissertation or a more complex test, you need a lot of energy and a lot of algorithms behind that in order to get the labels out. With that, we come to a point that is very close to my heart, because we are working in a number of initiatives that are depending on the functionality of the neural network of the AI. Why is that? Because we have been building a data space of energy, production, consumption, pricing, weather conditions, emergencies, that allow a state, a country, or an industry to predict on will they have enough energy to produce. Funnily enough, one of the things that the Germans are really great with is to invent something that is cool and then leave it. With a change from predictable energy sources, our industry only works when the sun shines and the wind blows, because we're doing it as green as we can. Possibly is not the right way, but the government at the moment is taking its own sweet time to understand that. These models are used in other countries. They are used very well, but you need a certain level of accuracy. You need things that help you improve the quality of what you're doing. Test data. So the test sets, the train sets, the validation sets, that's where the music is, that's where the charms are in order to get a model across these magical 80% of entry data validation that allow you for a proper mathematical model. The thing that we understand the least and fear the most is bias. Systems develop bias. You all remember that Chicago Police Department thingy about prediction of crime areas. It totally went south because the system became racist. It was looking at colored people's crimes, but was totally missing out on the organized Albanian gangs that did the same business on a much larger scale. You didn't see it. Why? Because it was biased. I was part of an initiative at the MIT that tried to understand, why is that? Is it only the police reports by white male policemen? No. We were not able to understand in depth what's the problem with it. So a systematic error of a system must be combined with the understanding of the incoming data. But how it really works, nobody knows. Honestly, we cannot answer that question. I believe that with a number of what we've heard this morning, this will be one of the bigger tasks that from a scientific as well as from an industry perspective, we need to learn. So you see the curves on the right, overfitting and underfitting are mathematical problems. It leads to results that you don't like, but thank God you understand why it is the way it is, unlike bias, which really is complicated. Confusion matrices, you all know about true falses, true positives. It's not as simple as it looks on that quadrant, but there are ways to get there. And even with what we had in the morning about generated deep fake videos or tonalities, there are ways to get there. Metadata recursion and other methods can help you get a grip on that. If we go on, the validation metrics I've been talking about 3 times now. I spare you the in-depths of it. And we go on. Thank you. Questions? Any questions? Not even a little one?
If may, I just make a summarize. No, thank you very much for your presentation. It was very interesting and up to date, providing insights what is behind really the AI. And I'm just thinking about 2 things. Nowadays, AI is very crucial. So we can say that I don't want to work with it. For example, as a financial executive, or just one employee of a big company. So I'm just wondering whether it is very perfect presentation. Other than if it's possible to bring all this stuff a little bit closer to the everyday people, let's say, because we also learn that different methods, different architectures needs to different projects and so on. And we learn that if we get the best data, it will result in the best efficient AI. This is one thing. Well, let me give another remark as well. Since I'm a cybersecurity expert, I'm just wondering whether it's possible or to be, maybe we have a solution, I don't know, on the market. We should think about the self-defense capability of this AI model, because what I'm thinking about is that if bad actor tamper the training modules and training datas, then the result will be totally crashed and will not provide efficient results. You mentioned a very good example for that, the police department.
Thank you very much. These are 2 very important remarks. Let me come to your first remark first. When I was a young guy, I wanted to see the world. I joined a consulting firm and was traveling. I had to work long nights, doing a lot of PowerPoint, which I hated. And what I learned there is if you have a message for the upper ranks, make it understandable for a 6-year-old. If you don't do that, you fail. Unfortunately, it has proven true. So if we understand the use cases of what I have been trying to show you in agriculture, in energy, in the automotive industry, make it simple. Make it as simple that people can understand it. You can hope for a love for mathematical understanding in everyone, but this hope might be a sad story. So if you can't make it simple, better don't do it. We're consulting a number of very large companies with managers who have a very short attention span. If you can't break it down to 3 simple sentences, you're done. So you really need to think what you're doing there. The second thing is the most critical remark, because the first thing can be solved somehow. The second thing is the critical part. From a cybersecurity aspect, the use of large language models is a nightmare. You have no control on the bias. So when we work in difficile industries, especially in the energy sector, we stay away from large language models and develop specialist language models on our own, where we take the responsibility to look through the input data to understand what the output is. Since we have no clue how bias really works, there are attempts for a mathematical explanation of it. Not entirely sure. I stand here and honestly say, I don't know. So we have to put research behind it. We have to do a lot about it. What we're doing now is to isolate it to the core that we have designed it for, and to be very, very careful in order to what data do we allow into a system. Of course, on isolated trunks, we're experimenting with how the hell does it work and why does it react the way it reacts? But it's still experimentation state.
Thank you very much. Balázs, what are you thinking about all these things? I'm mostly the second topic or questions
Thank
raised.
you.
Thanks.
Thank you, László. So you were saying several times that we don't understand bias, and also imply that bias is bad. But there is a kind of bias in these models which we could call our culture. How do you approach that aspect?
Thank you. That's a lovely question. Honestly, I'm more on the problem side of that. The cultural identity, regional identity, or even idiom, if you look at text-based systems, are welcome biases. For me, it just adds, and I have to water that down. From a mathematical and strategic perspective, it's just watering down my model. Can I find a way to distinct culture and regionality, or even craftsmanship? If you look at the slangs of IT people versus journalists, yes, I can learn to understand that. I can learn the idiom and I can respect that. What I find totally difficult to work with is the outcome, because especially if you have to put that into large language models, you can't distinguish one from the other. You can do that very easily. We tried that in a project called civic participation. The German government does a lot to make people understand that there is a necessity to build railways and grid networks. So the government wanted to understand, how does that sentiment work and why does it change when a politician visits somewhere and the people go on the streets and throw things at him, which unfortunately happens more often than we would like to see. But why is that? And how does it change over time? So we developed a tool where we try to exactly understand that. The major learning that we had is how to identify a bot or a malicious actor from a real person. But we could not identify good bias from bad bias. So if you use slang words, if you use dialect in speech, where are several models in the German language, at least, I don't know how it is in Hungary, but to separate the biases from each other, from my perspective, from the mathematical and technical perspective, is extremely hard.
Thank you very much. So we will have to stay tuned on that one.
Most
Another
definitely.
point that I was thinking as you were giving the example of Chicago Police Department and that bias is the story that my history teacher told us about Columbus discovering America, and that the indigenous population, they couldn't see the boats on the sea because their eyes were not trained to see that on the sea. It was a pattern that they've never seen. So that's, I guess, we are built the same way, to not see patterns we don't know about.
The insecurities, one of the younger Bushs misused the phrase to beyond recognition. The truth is, I'm mildly afraid of the things where I know that I don't know them. What kills me is when I don't know what I don't know, because I don't know even in which direction to look. I don't know the enemy. I don't know the cure. I don't know what will work. This will kill us for sure. So Are we not seeing the ships? Or is it Cortes, the killer, with his horses and some rusty armor already on land and making our lives difficult? I don't know where we are really. What I do know is that if you intend to use these technologies without ethical background and without ethical guardrails, we might face a problem. And that problem might be bigger than we're able to estimate to the very day. So I'm not a fan of these doomsayers who believe that the world will end in tears. I don't see that. But I very clearly see what you can do with malicious deeds and how far you can reach with that. So, as always in life, measure produces countermeasure. Like the Mossad says, mikrim vet guvot. You give hard, you take hard. That's what's happening at the moment. The Russians are coming up with new ways of trying to infiltrate networks almost on a monthly basis. And we're trying to chase them to their homeland now, which we haven't been doing before. So we're trying to find different ways of attack and counterattack. I believe this will be the same with the ships on the horizon. Maybe we'll be able to see them.
Thank you very much. And it's an amazing segue because you will have a presentation later today where we will talk about compliance and the implications of AI and ethics.
Yes, this is a very interesting part of using AI to be aware that we have regulations to be compliant with, and we have to make sure that every requirements are, at the end of the day, are met and implemented. Thank you again for your presentation. It was great and highly appreciated.
So okay, we're taking a break and we'll come back with the next presentation in about 15 minutes.
So welcome again, ladies and gentlemen. Today, a second discussion of technical session will be about building an AI-driven cybersecurity lab for NSA certified institutions. Please welcome the panelists. We will have Sandeep Kaur, VP of FinTech and Blockchain at Innova Solution Corporation, a FinTech leader with a track record of groundbreaking accomplishments, including founding with Bitcoin in 2014 to educate women about crypto assets. Balázs Nagy, he's the CEO of NewPush, whose leadership has been instrumental in delivering transformative cybersecurity solution. Next, Mr. László Vele, he is the CTO of NewPush, providing technical advices and implementing projects in different market segments. Mr. Kristóf Takács, who is VP of Cloud Hosting at NewPush. So first and foremost, I would like to ask you to please provide case studies as well, if it's possible, and I will be very happy to make a summary and some questions afterwards. The floor is yours. Sandeep is here. Welcome. So Balázs, please take the floor.
To thank you because
My pleasure. So guys, the floor is yours. Please make your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you, László, for the introduction. First, we're going to show in a moment a pitch deck. But what is this about in the first place? How this came about? One of our challenges on a daily life is to make sure we find good talent for our team, good cybersecurity talent. We have a great team, but as we grow, we constantly need to evolve it. There are new projects. And as we were looking at the recruitment challenges, we discussed with others in the industry, and there seemed to be a consensus that there is a difficulty and a gap. There are students that graduate from various universities. They have various types of knowledge, And then if you want a certification that gives a basis of achievement that would be more uniform, you have to wait 5 years. It's called the CISSP. One could argue that even with CISSP, it's not totally uniform, but I think the consensus is if you have a CISSP, it means something. Certainly for me, even though I have 3 master's degrees, CISSP was the hardest certification I ever had to do. But I think we can all agree that if you pass the CISSP, you have a lot of knowledge on policy, compliance, and technology, from encryption to understanding how to approach governance around cybersecurity. And we were wondering how to close this gap, how to ensure that higher education institutions are able to give more consistency in the way teaching is done. Luckily, we've been doing now for over 5 years a number of research projects with some really strong institutions, some in the US and some in Hungary. And that gave us kind of a breeding ground for brainstorming ideas. One of the institutions was PTE, the Pécsi Tudományegyetem in Hungarian. That's the University of Pécs, which is a beautiful city in southern Hungary. It's actually the farthest large place you can go from Budapest. So László and I are traveling on a regular basis. As we were going into this journey, we realized that there isn't a great lab environment for teaching the students, allowing them to practice cybersecurity, where to deploy the exercises to do. And then as we start building it, we realized that in the US, there is a small organization that nobody ever heard of, the NSA, but they heard of us. And basically, they have different tracks for universities to be certified for their cybersecurity education. And they have a very thorough set of prerequisites that as a university in the US you need to reach in order to be NSA certified for your cyber program. We realized that what we were building with PTE was well aligned with what the NSA wanted. We decided to go all the way because our university partners in the US, they happen to be already NSA certified. And so they wanted that the partnership with us and our lab that we will present today is compatible with that certification, is compatible with the curriculum. So this is kind of the background of how we started. László put together this pitch deck. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over and let's get through the pitch deck.
Hello, I'm László Vele, and I am one of the person who actually built the lab with Christoph. And this pitch deck is on the web page as well. So if you want to revisit, you can do it anytime by clicking on the pitch deck button. Both myself and Christoph, we have home labs at home. And I think Johannes and you also have that. And we had all kinds of challenges over the years. And when we realized that there is a lot of people who just want to have their own home lab, kind of, but doesn't have the expertise or the time and so on, doesn't really have any proper solution yet, we started to develop something which we call NewPush labs. I think we both tired of spending hours configuring our IT lab in a way that we are just not proud of. We can agree that everyone's home lab is in a shape which doesn't really reflect our work-related qualities. Our home labs can be way better than by default. What we try to achieve here is to create some easy to repeat, unified way for creating home labs. So since setting up your own home lab is complex, it's time consuming, it's going to evolve over the years, and it's not something you are easy to share with someone else. So you have to do it alone, kind of. So time goes on, you just keep adding services, and due to the lack of time and lack of guidance, you will probably end up with a messy wreck. So there is a better way, and we were thinking about what could be the better way. Both Christoph and myself, we spend a significant amount of time browsing Reddit during work hour, and actually browsing GitHub as well to find solutions. And we didn't really find a proper solution. There were a couple of people who was trying to do something similar, but with a different tool set, or just not following best practices or the modern open source ways. So what could you have is a home lab, which is just works out of the box. It's secure and it's fully configured. It's easy to expand since we define how to add additional services and how to share those additional services and pieces of configuration items you add over time. And we're building this in a way to support both e-commerce, so who doesn't really have the deep expertise of computer systems in general, so end users kind of, and in a way to also support industry veterans and provide them a platform which is good for all timers as well. So you can start your own lab within a couple of minutes. It depends on your network speed kind of, and you will instantly see all the metrics in dashboards since we pre-configured the additional stuff, the monitoring, the metric collection for the services you're going to deploy. They also give you all kind of tools to access your home lab securely anywhere from the world, since it can be hosted online, best practices in mind. We have a fancy UI just to have something to click around. So what we did, we take decades of home lab experience, and we started to think about how we could do it better. It saves times, we reduce the complexity that way, and we empower you to learn. Since most of us build home labs to try out new stuff, play with software or projects, or sometimes even to host critical pieces of applications for our lives, next to the next big thing we are secretly developing. If you are a student, a professional, or someone who wants to try open source software, for example, with NewPush Labs, we think you are covered. With NewPush Labs, you are going to get some predefined lab stacks. So what we do is top of the base system, we are on a weekly basis, we are creating new stacks for the trendy open source softwares. And we provide a web UI for that, so it just works out of the box. You don't have to spend time configuring the new open source software or applications you want to try out. It just works. We also configure it in a way to make you able to monitor them properly, so you don't have to skip that part. And we do it in a way which is fully transparent. It's infrastructure as code. It's a set of Ansible scripts, Docker containers, so you can read everything. And actually, if it's something which needs to be configured within an application itself, we provide them scripts, Python scripts, which will do the configuration, or in some cases, just edit the database. These lab stacks are predefined environments for specific purposes, like workflow labs, AI, web development, DevOps. This way, you can evaluate newer technologies, since the open source version of some software sometimes takes several days to fully configure it. But with this, you just spin it up and you are able to compare multiple workflow engines within a couple of minutes. And then if you keep at the workflow example, you can choose which one you like and create your own personal automatizations, which you can run in the lab. So that's what we try to achieve here. And to reassure everyone that it worth your time, we publish it as an open source project. So it's going to stay. And that's it. It's well documented on the web, and the source is free.
So Gabor, if you could cue the presentation. Thank you very much for the pitch deck, László. I want to insist on this last point that we made it completely free, so anyone can download this lab. Today we are presenting another technology. László, I tripped you up a little bit because we did a last-minute addition with Milan. So Milan, do you want to just join us here? Milan is from the University of Óbuda, and they have a very nice complementary tool. You can just launch this one. They have a very nice complementary tool. Before we go into BlackAnt, which is the name of the other tool, we also going to have, I'm very proud to have Sandeep, who's one of our users or one of our experiences of interacting with us in terms of this new technology that we developed. Sandeep is really new to it, but very excited about it. So when I told her would you hop on from New York and hop on the plane and talk just a few words about it? She's like, sure, Balázs, but what am I going to say? And I said, no problem. I'm going to put it on the teleprompter for you and you have nothing to think about. So she agreed, but I tripped her up. She'll have to actually say her own ideas. So let's see if this is a better tool. This one or the main button? Which? Arrows? Okay. So just a little bit about NewPush. We are a very small but international company. This is actually our 25th year anniversary. It's still good to be in good company. By now, we are operating in 3 main continents: Europe, North America, and South America. And the main cities where we are based is Budapest, Denver, and Santiago. Denver and Santiago, it's important to know that there's wonderful weather and wonderful snow. So for those of us who are skiers or snowboarders, we can enjoy that. A couple of our clients over the years. And another side of the story that László was just going through the pitch deck, how did we get there? A quick run through of our 25 years, and I'm going to do it very short. The point is that cybersecurity has been always a challenge. As we started in infrastructure as a service, very quickly we faced the challenge of having to solve vulnerabilities for customers very fast. One time, for example, we were hosting the #1 jazz website in the world. The #2 jazz website had fans who would hire Russian hackers to hack. We had 40 minutes to patch a vulnerability between the time it appeared and the time they would be able to hack. So we had to get really good really fast. Then we realized there's a better way. And as we're discussing with Gartner is much better at coming up with names, processes, and marketing around new concepts. Gartner called it CTEM, which is the Continuous Threat Exposure Management, which is how you take vulnerability management, vulnerability prioritization to the next level. We thought this was very well aligned. And this is the lab that László just discussed. We built it so that we can teach the students continuous threat exposure management, a more mature way of dealing with cyber risk in the enterprise. László actually did it much better. So I just have a few other aspects of it. In my introduction, I mentioned that we don't have to go over it one more time. But some of the requirements that we had for this lab, so what László just presented, we wanted to make sure that, one, I mentioned the NSA requirements, but also we want to get a level playing field because the students come from various backgrounds. Some of them are very familiar with public-private key encryption, things like that, and some of them can barely SSH into a Linux server. Because we're teaching cybersecurity, we want to make sure that we level the playing field, and those who have weaknesses in some aspects of technology are not disadvantaged in learning the concepts in cybersecurity that we wanted to teach. So one of the things that László will show a little later is how easy we make it for you're not super cool with SSH, no problem. There is a click away that we can make it work for you. The other part that we noticed that it's actually in our conversation a really big challenge for universities is to be able to ingest real world scenarios into the teaching. Why? Because universities have the theoretical knowledge and the industry has the actual real world data, but the industry is usually not willing to share. So we have the advantage of being a huge provider with our own security operations center, with our own data that we know how to obfuscate. We can take the data, even take the tickets or those events that guys like Krzysztof or László have to solve and their teams under stressful situations. And then we can translate that into a real world inspired problem to students who get to solve it in a week. Like not under the stress of you got to solve this in the next 2 hours and bring this website back and get the attackers out, but you have a week to figure out how it's done so that when you actually get into a stressful situation, you've seen it before. And the other piece that László alluded to, but I wanted to highlight, is that these labs, and László calls it the home lab because it's a category, it's something that's self-contained, doesn't need any external dependencies. So you can fire it up on any computer or in the cloud, and it has everything you need. What was the goal for teaching to be interesting? We need to make sure that the scenarios are immersive and interesting for students. We have to kind of gamify teaching cybersecurity. and also give the opportunity for universities to collaborate and create different activities. For example, Peter here in the audience, you are a co-organizer of a number of events for students where students get to compete or collaborate. Milan, you as well, in a sister university. All these are items we wanted to bring into it. We also envisioned that because of the open sourcing of the tool can then open up to be bigger than just within a country, bigger than just within a set of universities. But our vision is to make this a worldwide community because we lift all the hurdles. There's no financial constraints. You can download it for free and you can become part of the community. László mentioned a little bit about Configuring Lab, and because we are going to have a real-life demo, I'm going to skip over these slides, right, László? It's just you see some of the examples of how you take away the complexity. And many of you who are listening online or who are here in the audience, you're like, I can do this. And I know many of you can do it. But remember, it could take you an afternoon. Sometimes you do it in 10 minutes, sometimes the whole afternoon. And as you grow in your career, our previous presenter, Johannes, was nodding here in the audience that, yes, I can do it, but yes, it can take a lot of time. Having something that saves time may be very interesting. The other thing is that it's repeating, like in every single tool, you want to do the same thing. So you want to make it work with your SSO, the single sign-on, so that all the tools are part of your same identity management. If you set up a team, the same team has access to everything the same way. You also want to make it so that when you expand this, it would work. László just presented that part, the stacks, and it's going to be more interesting to actually see them. László asked us to do case studies, so we have to oblige MC. One of them was, how are we going to teach CTEM? Normally on a longer presentation, I explain what CTEM is. Gartner came up with this process and how you take risk management to the next level. I'm not going to spend time on that. You can look it up. Basically, how we teach CTEM was one of our use cases, especially because a large enterprise has the maturity level where they can relatively easily deploy CTEM. But for a small, medium-sized business, it is very challenging. Challenging because you don't get to buy the same tools necessarily. So somebody has to curate a stack for you. Curating the stack in the lab environment is one of them. And then the other challenge is you can't easily hire the same type of cybersecurity experts as large organizations can. Taking this as the example, we can take all these enterprise-grade problems and bring them down to the student level, and the student actually can start working at a small, medium-sized business and be as effective as some of the experts in large enterprises. In fact, I would argue maybe sometimes better, because even in large enterprises, they don't always have that Gartner maturity level. So here's another use case where we have less than 40 minutes to patch or to solve for a vulnerability. This is a transportation district, a public transportation district servicing an area of 2 million people. Amongst the 2 million people, you will always find people who are upset. And among the people who are upset, there may be some who are geek enough that they want to somehow take revenge and take down the system. So especially when new lines are opening, some people try to take out the website and cause problems. So that was one of the examples how we brought up on the CTEM concept. What's really interesting is, especially when you are in this hybrid environment that also Johannes alluded to, in complex environments, to replicate the environment is really hard. And this lab that was designed now, creating a stack that replicates the complicated environment, each member of your team can work with the same stack, but completely safely, and start playing. So even it is expandable to even IoT. And then the last one is the Cybersecurity Awareness Program, which we can also leverage aspects of the stack that would go more into the AI side, because the attackers are using AI. And so how do you set up some of the AI capabilities? In this case, the actual software used for the protection is KnowBe4, which is one of the better known and most advanced security awareness technologies. We will go a little bit under the hood. László, do you want to talk about this a little bit? Christoph, you talk about it. Go ahead.
So when we were designing the lab, we had some crucial questions to ourselves that how we are going to do that and this. So we needed a secure network operation. First, we wanted to design a secure lab stack, but it went over to whole home lab situation, and we wanted to provide better separation between stacks too. Extensible stack management was crucial. We have found easy ways to deploy more and more different stacks you can use for your education. SSL provisioning was crucial as when you open something up to the internet, you need to encrypt all the traffic you can. There were some difficulties when we did that in large amounts. The VM deployments are also must have for these kind of deployments. We are saving so much time because of our scripts. Initially, we wanted to simulate corporate networks for security scans and security assessments, but after that, we have found that Docker's networking is great for separation, basic network configuration, and Docker's network drivers are awesomely customizable. It's great because you can deploy so much subnets or so much IP ranges within seconds. So everything has their own space. Okay, so what we was thinking that for these open source lab, we need to reuse open source projects. The best way to do that is to collect them into Docker Compose projects. We can customize them, create boilerplates or templates, and everyone can select what they want to deploy. They can easily customize their own stack, and this is the easy way to bring up your setup. We have various UIs, including Port Trainer and another open source tool type, Doggy. This way, you can deploy entire Docker stacks or Docker Compose stacks without breaking your time clock. It's an intuitive way. Everyone can use it, and it's just a few clicks. Okay, so when we started to deploy the labs for the first users, we had some issues with Let's Encrypt. Let's Encrypt is a great project because it provides free SSL certifications to everyone on the internet. It has some limitations, but unfortunately, it wasn't suitable for us because it has strict rate limit appliances, and we weren't able to issue that many wildcard or individual cells. And because of that, we needed to look into other ACME-compatible SSL providers. We tried out Google PKI as well, but the selection went to Zero SSL. Zero SSL is great as well because it's not that huge and popular as Let's Encrypt, but actually it's using Sectigo's root CA, so it's trusted on basically all devices. Okay, and regarding automation, the whole lab itself automated, so you can deploy it very quickly. László created a very strong base in Ansible for that, and it's industry standard for creating automated deployment. For various deployments, we selected various HashiCorp products. We used Packer for creating different system images. You can build raw files within seconds and bring it over to your hypervisor clusters if you need to. We use Terraforms. We plan to use Terraform for cloud providers. Currently, we are able to deploy the apps to Google Cloud Platform without any issues, and it's within minutes to be completed. These automations are really doing good jobs. We plan to support all the big cloud suppliers and also BlackAnt. So when we needed to test out new features or new feature sets, it was a little bit hard to spin up a new VM every time. BlackAnt is a great tool to automatically spin up a virtual machine on your local computer. It works on macOS, works on Linux, works on Windows 2. We have VirtualBox and VMware support. And as of 2 days and on Wednesday, Broadcom announced that the VMware workstation is free for commercial use. That's a suitable solution for everyone, not just individuals. For SMB hosting provider, we have created packages so customers can deploy their own home labs within a few minutes. They just order the service and they have the new one provisioned. And as László also mentioned, this was being used personally in PTA, University of Pécs, Hungary. So already a couple dozen students are using it. Okay. In the near future, I plan to support all the major cloud providers. We want to implement a tunneling mechanism. Currently, you need to have a public IP or public host name that is pointing to our lab because of the easier SSL configuration, the automatizations. So this is something we are looking into, and we need to publish new packages to our SMB packages. Thank you. Let's keep going.
Thank you, Krzysztof. You are presenting this in a very modest way. This is a lot of work, a lot of long nights, and a lot of trial and error. Also, it was amazing to work with the University of Pécs because the students were giving us great feedback. This being the first semester, we had items to iron out, and the quality of the students mattered a lot to get the right feedback. László, me, and Krzysztof, you were supporting us from Budapest as we were in Pécs to in front of the students to get it done. Every Monday, we're running a live session with the lab, and then throughout the week, the students are using that. What I wanted to do is invite Sandeep to say a few words about your thoughts on that type of lab and just the background that you are a VP, a business person, a student, and you also like to play with new technologies.
Hello, everyone. I'm Sandeep, and I'm a VP at Innova Solution, which is an IT consulting firm. We are about 3 billion in revenue. 50,000 employees all around the world. And I lead their blockchain division. I'm head of blockchain at Innova Solution. The other thing I do, I'm into venture funds where I work with digital asset startups on fundraising and strategic partnerships. So that's my day-to-day focus. I live in New York City. And yeah, so these two things keeps me very, very busy all day. And just recently, 2 weeks ago, Balaj, László, and Colleen, we all were working together on one very big project. We just finished it last week. Yeah,
I think so, yeah.
Last week, Thursday, Friday. So happy to be here. Yeah.
So you just saw the presentation. How do you feel about being able to deploy a lab like that on your laptop?
In blockchain, one of the things when we talk about custody, right? When I was in your class, we talked about custody. And also now something that I'm actively looking into, AI agents, right? Deploying AI agents, especially using that for trading. That's, I think, the new thing. So for me, I would be really excited to kind of play with it and how I can use AI to run some of the bots for trading, also kind of take help from the agents, and we can improve the custody side of it.
So you're in luck because László at the end will have a demo. We'll end with demoing the platform. What we will do next is show another aspect of a lab that's a complementary lab. So very interestingly, Óbuda has been working on a complementary project. So this is how you explore, how you test, how you experiment, how to create new things, as László mentioned. And now you created your new things. How are you going to scale? So that's the question that Óbuda is answering.
Hello, everybody. My name is Milan Balázs, and I'm from Óbuda University. And I would like to talk about the BlackAnt very briefly. What is it? BlackAnt platform is a microservice-based, high-available execution platform with a dynamical scaling. And it is directly designed for the researchers and resourceful calculations and operations. And yes, if you would like to set up a new system or deploy a new system, then there are many points which have to be solved. For example, the public clouds are expensive. If you are familiar with the big cloud providers like the Google Cloud or Azure or AWS, then if you are not a real IT expert, then it could be quite expensive. And yes, and the high available and the scalable system, it's hard to set up, and deep IT knowledge is needed. And of course, the security and the scaling are very important points, and these points require deep IT knowledge. Our BlackAnt platform could be a solution for these points. So the key points of the platform: simple to use. So a couple of days training could be enough. So if somebody wants to use our platform, deep IT or programming skills are not needed. The platform provides a very simple framework for developers. It is a very simple state machine with the usual state: setup, run, tear down, result, and that's it. Very big and complex projects can be migrated to this platform. You should pay what you use. Furthermore, you can integrate your resource under the platform. It is very easy and simple. You have to fill out one configuration file, click, and that's it. The platform will be able to use your resource. As I mentioned, there is no really deep IT skills, even the DevOps or DevSecOps. So the platform has own DevOps flows. These flows are integrated, so the developers or users shouldn't care about the DevOps and the CI flows. The system is robust, high availability. So if you have the required infrastructure, then you don't need to care about the high availability. The system is designed for the high available operation. And scalable. As I mentioned, there is a dynamical scaling. And if the traffic is high, or if you have a calculation which is really resourceful, then the system dynamically or automatically scaling the system and the infrastructure under the platform. Yes, here are some features: the task level management related to authentication and authorization. We have modern authentication and authorization. So we can decide which user has which resource. We use out-of-the-box components where needed. And as I mentioned, we have a predefined project template, which is a very simple state machine and dynamical scaling. If you see this diagram, under the hood, there is a very complex implementation and system. But if we see the user's side, then it is a really simple flow. You can see the key points of the platform. Coding skill is not needed for the end users. Developers can implement the calculations, and the end users, like the researchers, only has to start the calculation with the defined configurations or dataset. Python 3 is supported language right now, but we plan to extend the supported languages. Modern UI and the RESTful API are available. Based on the user's feedback, we continuously develop the UI and the RESTful API. We have additional services like MongoDB, MinIO, and SMTP services. If the user has permission to use these services, then these can be used. We have periodical schedules for the periodic runs, real-time monitoring and the backup services, so the data is safe and reproducible, high available, and the dynamical scaling based on the resource. What is under the hood? So I don't want to tell something about all of the technologies, but you can see we use many technologies, and we try to select the most efficient technologies for the different areas, and actually everything runs in containers, and Docker Swarm is the orchestrator for it, and there are many nodes, so the physical servers or a VP virtual servers under the platform. So here is a possible infrastructure for the platform. This infrastructure is implemented for university usage. The manager nodes, worker nodes, and the database nodes are separated. And if we have enough resource, then the platform is able to use or scale up to high available. And as you can see, the infrastructure can be extended by external resources like the Hetzner high available load balancer. It is a German-based cloud provider. And as you can see the right side, the OE, this is the university resources are also included. The other cloud is a Hungarian cloud provider. So actually the different availability zones are possible to integrate it to the platform. How does it play? It's a very simple diagram. The developer can implement the calculation itself, and the end user, for example, the researchers, should use the web UI or the RESTful API. Any other things are done by the platform. The developer and the end user could be the same person. Actually, here is the same but a bit detailed diagram. I think it is not important. Yeah, the dynamical scaling. We are talking about the Docker Swarm and the Docker containers. If we want to run a service, it can be replicated between the nodes. So the system is able to detect if the load is very high. In that case, it will create a new replica. There is enough resource, then the different replicas will be running on different nodes. Nowadays, we work on this topic to be able to scale horizontally as well as vertically the resource under the platform. I would like to show some real use cases. These are implemented by the PhD students and the researchers, and they are running in the system right now. Here is a use case when the platform is integrated to the smartwatch with the API in JavaScript, and it collects the data from the smartwatch, right? The blood pressure and so on and so on and so on. And it is stored in a data collector, which is a MongoDB in the BlackAnt platform. And users can fetch the data after some processing. Here is another use case when the calculation converts the handwritten documents to the LaTeX format. And actually this research focuses especially on mathematical formulas. Format you can see here, we have object storage, this is min.io, and user can use min.io as object storage, so they don't need to store very big files on the local computer. The platform is designed for resourceful operations. Mainly it is used for the AI, machine learning, deep learning, big data. And here is a use case when the model training is done inside the platform, the files are stored in min.io, for example, the H5 model files. Yes, it is a very similar, but here is not the training in the focus, just the prediction, the AI-based prediction. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for presenting this BlackAnt project. It was a pleasure to discover this parallel effort in another prestigious Hungarian university at Óbuda that does a complementary work to the lab. So now, László, if you don't mind to go over to the laptop where you can demo right? No. And while László is getting ready to take over the screen, I just wanted to say that we're going to go back a little bit now to examples of using the lab, how you can use the lab. I started that with Sandeep coming up. So she's a VP, a businesswoman, and you see that she is not afraid of using the lab. So hopefully many in the audience will give it a try as well. You don't have to be a geek. And we have others in the audience who are home lab experts, and they are interested in using the lab. So we will show you how easy it is as soon as László is ready. In the meantime, what else can I say? Hey, I was actually very excited as we did it, and the fact that we could open source. This is our first open source project at NewPush after 25 years. It was always in the plan that we contribute something, but it's not easy to create an open source project. You have to build a community, build documentation, make it easy to use, and make people want to use it. So the project can take a life of its own. László and I have been on a roadshow in the US and in Hungary to show that to different universities and in the industry. We got very positive feedback so far. I hope you guys, as you will see now the live demo from László, you will enjoy that. I'm sorry about the cameraman, but you have to switch in an unexpected way. Hopefully it will work out. Thank you, everybody. László, you're on.
Okay. So one of the problems with open source project is you actually have to produce quality code, which will be seen by others. And the another issue with them is you actually has to create some kind of documentation which will be read by others. So here we try to address both issues. First of all, we created a website which explains in different levels what actually going on. So you can visit it on the labs.newpush.com. We have a couple of guides. It's a work in progress, so it's a new project, but there are a couple of tutorials already how you can use your lab for different activities. So for example, how can save resources by start and stop containers on demand, or how to use your lab as a tailscale exit node, and so on. And we also have a reference section where we have a comprehensive documentation for all the modules, actually, with the necessary configurations. For people like Johansson, you will find all the settings here. And for people who are not that tech savvy, they just have to use the application launcher and the high-level UIs. So this is an instance of a lab. So in the presentation, we told you you can spin it up with a set of scripts. There is an installation section in the documentation.
If downloading the open source code is a little bit intimidating, we have that available as a ready-to-go package. And there is a URL where you can sign up and just get the lab deployed for you and running if in case you don't feel like downloading the open source.
Yes, exactly. So we can also host the lab for you. And you will be also able to spin it up in various cloud like AWS or GCP. But right now, you just need to open a ticket at our side and we will spin our lab for you as well. And in the very near future, you will be able to provision a hosted version of the lab by yourself. Okay, so this is my lab, actually, which already have a set of applications running. The base lab actually consists just a couple of icons, the traffic, the cast door, maybe the top row, and the monitoring part, and this one. And
if you don't mind going back up, this is an example like the Visual Studio Code. That's where you can code. Some of you know, but some of you don't. This is one of the things that the NSA requires, that people know how to program. The NSA does not accept your cybersecurity skills if you only have theoretical skills, but you don't know how to code up some of the exploits or some of the configurations.
In this case, for example, the end user most of the time doesn't need access to VS Code, so we don't run it all the time. We have a component in place called Cellular, which will just start this VS Code instance for us, hopefully. Right.
And while it's starting, you can show something else.
Yes. By the way, we have the default stack, which consists of a shell, so the end users are able to spin up on the terminal session. By the way, yeah, like so. I think we are on mobile, and that might be the issue here. Use these are definitely works. Yeah, so this is the VS Code, which I started previously. And this is my shell.
Actually, what I wanted to highlight here is no need to know what SSH is. That was just one click and you were in a shell. László and I are teaching, as Sandeep alluded to, some crypto classes where we also demystify the command line. A lot of the things we see in hacker movies, the hackers typing on the command line, but actually anyone can do that. So it's not hard. And here we make it available to you right out of the box.
We ship everything with pre-made monitoring and Grafana templates. These templates are also shipped like infrastructure as a code kinda. So you not just get the raw Grafana templates, but you get the scripts which are actually building them. The lab itself came fully configured SSO. So the lab can act as an IDP for your other project as well, since we use Casdor. And yeah, these applications I started for my lab. This is not part of the default installation, but I'm interested in workflow engines, for example. And right now I have a mini AI lab as well. These stacks are managed by a simple script called Doki, where we ship Docker Compose files. And we also created a set of scripts which read labels from these composer files. You can define icons and the ingress routes can be set. The packages are auto updates and so these are under the hood. As I said, you can get away by just using Portainer, for example. We also ship more than 500 pre-configured applications.
You notice SSO was just at work. There was just a button, a click away, and László logged into the system right there.
Here you see we have like 500 applications pre-configured. If you don't really want to understand what's going under the hood, you can still able to launch, let's say, Autobot, which is a very interesting and funny software. These templates are automatically pre-configured for the lab itself. It contains the icons, the ingress controller configuration, the mappings of the folders. This is which usually you need to read the manual and documentation and fiddle with the settings. Here, if I would be brave enough, but I'm not, I will just press the deploy the container button, and after a couple of seconds, the icon will just pop up and you are good to go. In Grafana, we aggregate the logs and the metrics. In some cases, you have a dashboard for it, so you are able to monitor the resource usage of your lab. The lab is designed in a way that you can get away with minimal resources, so even on a Raspberry Pi, or if you have a beefy server or a cloud environment, you can scale it as your pocket allows. Basically, that's it. We have all kinds of interesting things going under the hood, which you can check on the documentation. For example, we have intrusion prevention systems in place, auto updates and security settings here and there. So it's a work in progress, but as we said, everything is accessible through GitHub. And we also had a lot of commits already.
Amazing demo, László, and we even finished a few minutes early. So any questions, any curveballs, anything inspiring from the audience? We left you speechless, I see. All right. Well then, László, back to you.
Yes, thanks. If I add some remarks, thank you very much for this insightful presentation. I really liked it. Let me just give a practical remark from the employer point of view. I think what we are doing is very good. We can call it an initiative, but maybe it's better to call it as a mission. Well, so congratulations, because from the employer point of view, what we are doing at the University of Pécs. I am the head of Cybersecurity Center and Cybersecurity Knowledge at the university. We always recruit colleagues from the market, but we always want to have people who is already ready and has a knowledge and has experience, but it's not possible. Or if you can find some people with this typical knowledge, it costs a lot. But we changed our mind and we try to look at the young ones who just finished their studies. And I think this is a very good idea, what you prepared at our university with Peter, that you provide framework, you provide a knowledge base, you provide the tool sets, everything for the students. And after a couple of weeks, couple of months, they will be able to run different projects. And at the end of the day, as we are as the university, I will be more than happy to welcome these guys at my department. Thank you very much. I think this is very crucial. Nowadays, this kind of labs is not common nowadays. You cannot find these labs like yours on the market or available for free or just to play around. This is what I wanted to add, and I think is very good. So congratulations again.
Thank you very much. And I think everybody's ready to take a lunch break. So with that, we'll see you guys after lunch.
So ladies and gentlemen, welcome again. The next session will be about the AI Act and the NIS2 directive, which is, we can say, that gaining compliance to gaining a competitive advantage to compliance. So let me introduce our speaker, Dr. Gergely Szabó, the partner at Bonn, Szabó, Rausch and Partners, brings extensive legal expertise in navigating complex regulatory frameworks, and myself, László Vele. Please, the floor is yours, and I will jump in as you wish. Thanks.
My plan is to make this session as easy and fun as we can, and be a bit interactive, because after lunch we just need to pump up a little bit. And I would really rely on all your insights and comments, especially for your insights as having tremendous experience on these fields. So let me not waste any more time. So I'm a lawyer, I'm a consultant. I've been working for our law firm, Bonn, Szabó, Rausch and Partners, for more than 15 years. When I got into the firm, my eyes were blinking. I wanted to change the world. And now, after some thousands or 10,000s of billed hours, I would like to make the world better for my family and the next generation. So for the next 30 minutes, you will be the fifth most important person in my life. We have 3 topics for today. One about digital transformation and AI. The second would be about the EU AI Act. And the third would be about NIS2 directive and cybersecurity. I don't know whether you can add some insights on these topics.
Yes, I think both regulatory frameworks has common topics. I think it's very crucial. In the former years, the companies, especially the enterprises, forget about this very important task to conclude, which is the supply chain management and supply chain risk. So AI Act and the NIS2 is also advise us, or not advise, but requires us to implement control measures which address the risk of the supply chains. And so this is one thing which is common in both. And on the other hand, we can easily find institutions, companies which are obliged to comply with the both standards in the same time, as the University of Pécs as well. So I will share some insights afterwards. And I think it's very important that all these regulatory framework are for, as I mentioned before, for example, building trust. So building trust for the public and for our customers. If we implement such countermeasures and frameworks, our partners will really trust in our procedures and how we handle the data. And not last but not least, market differentiations. Though implementing these kind of frameworks gives innovation enablement as well. Just mentioning a few, but I will give the floor to you, and please go on and please dive us together these frameworks.
Thank you. So it is true that we are living in an interconnected world with global supply chains, and a holistic approach should be in terms of implementing any new tool into our corporate practices. Some of us might think that AI would be a good tool, but most digital transformation initiatives and inclusion of AI into practice fails, mostly because corporations are not concentrating on the smooth inclusion of these tools into their existing practices and on the focusing from client perspective and user perspective. They just want to play with the new tools and expect that the new tools will make work easier, require less workforce, and change their words. But they don't investigate whether they need those tools at all or whether they fit into the corporate strategy. These systems are also interconnected, and there's a dependence between systems and services, and there's a big threat of cybersecurity regarding the use of AI as well. If we can jump to the next slide, there are some unsolicited tips for digital transformation. Lawyers love to have unsolicited tips. We even more love it when we get money for that. According to me, there are 3 steps of digital transformation. First is to modernize the systems and processes. The second is the digital transformation, that we think about how the value chains can be fine-tuned and integrated, and the tools can be integrated into the existing processes. The third one is to create new business opportunities and foster innovation through digital transformation and AI. Transformation and AI should fit into corporate strategy, and you shouldn't rush it. It's not about the first movers, it's about the smart movers. There's no ultimate solution. We should tailor everything to the current needs of the corporation. We can rely on consultants like me, but consultants should collaborate with the insider guys who knows the existing systems, the methods, and the requirements of the client. So, as I mentioned, we shouldn't focus on eliminating jobs. We should focus on how we can fine-tune processes and create new opportunities. So, and as last point before I turn to the EU AI Act, I would emphasize that we shouldn't take the regulations as another burden or pain points. We should see the opportunity in those regulations and not focus on the fines, but focus on our end users, on our clients, how to make life better for them, and how to build resilient corporation or university for their benefit. Turning to the main topics of this seminar, if you have any question, then please interrupt me. The EU AI Act. What is the EU AI Act? This is a new regulation. They say that it's the first comprehensive one in the world. Its aim is to boost the leadership of EU in the world of AI and trusted AI. But if you take a look at the main AI players in the world, you can see that those are not EU players. It's a product of a lot of debates and a lot of legislative works, which went on since 2021. Each law, it's a compromise. It sets the boundaries of the market players, sets up the kindergarten, and tell them what tools can they use, how can they use their tools, and what would be the consequences if they don't use their tools properly. So, the legislator tried to have a broad scope of this regulation. It covers almost all players, and most importantly, even players from outside the EU who puts something on the EU market or the output of their AI is used in the EU. The good thing is that everyday users should not be afraid of this regulation, except if they use it for business purposes. For example, if I would have drafted all this nonsense with AI, then I would be subject of this regulation. So, speaking of some definitions, because lawyers love definitions, the AI system is quite broad. It can catch all the different solutions, and the AI Act has a risk-based approach, differentiating between different systems and practices. Most of its text deals with high-risk systems, and most of the obligations are applicable on those systems. Another unsolicited advice would be that, and hopefully people will be cautious while try to develop or use such systems. The Act differentiates between 4 categories: prohibited, high risk, general purpose, and low risk AI systems. Prohibited systems are totally banned from next February the 2nd. One might think about how to build solutions that might not fit into this category, because some weeks ago someone asked me whether they can develop a system which recognizes the emotions of employees, like when they have their annual or monthly reports regarding how happy they are with the employer. Having this emotion tracking is not accepted by regulation. There are some exceptions for security and educational reasons. All players should be crucial when they try to invest into something new. So speaking of high-risk systems, most of the rules catch those systems. There are several requirements, and I would point out the due cybersecurity requirement regarding those systems and the transparency and quality management obligations related to those systems. We have some transparency obligations and general purpose AI models as well. Thank you. I was waiting for...
Yeah, thanks.
Regarding the transparency, I'm just what came in my mind that at this point, because of the transparency, it has a connection to the GDPR because we have to inform the data subjects, which means that the data subjects have to be exercise his access right, access to his data and data management and how it looks like. And that's why we can see an interconnection between these regulations. The transparency is one of the main requirements of the AI Act and as well as NIS 2. So thank you. This is just one thing I wanted to add.
Adding to this, I would emphasize that, for example, in case of an HR software, we should be cautious from AI Act perspective. We should be also cautious from GDPR perspective and regarding the national employment laws perspective and trade union perspectives as well. It's like being an octopus and catching everything. It's really hard, needs some concentration and some advisors who can work for their money. Jumping to the slide, you can see there that the bureaucracy with the AI Act raised new workplaces for good people in these agencies and boards. Significant sanctions are contained in the AI Act, but as I mentioned in the other room, it's not about the fines, the sanctions, it's about the consequences of such use or such violation. So, if you don't have any question, then we can jump into the next topic. It's cybersecurity, NIS2 compliance, and another bunch of unsolicited tips and recommendations. It's a sexy topic, but it's a really important topic as well. I hope that most of the affected companies and corporations already did their notification obligations and comply with the relevant requirements, which is like a shifting target. Before the Hungarian parliament, there's a new act which puts together two existing laws and has some funny new articles inside it. So it makes the life of affected companies and professionals a bit worse. My fellow panelists said that Hungarian legislation is really strict on this field. Actually, the requirements are based on the NIST standards, the US standards, and we have a Hungarian decree which is almost 90 pages long. So some trees should be cut if you would like to print it out. And
I'm sorry to interrupt you. There's one remark for this last point, the NIS, the NIST 853 standard, which is an American standard for cybersecurity and has a Annex D and has a lot of set of controls divided into three control categories, control classes. But this standard is not new in Hungary, especially in the financial sector, because the financial banks and insurance companies' control frameworks are based on this American standard. The former jurisdiction, which was the 50-es törvény for the government bodies and entities, was based also in this American standard, so the control measures. So
the issue is that the scope of NIS2 is much broader regarding the relevant companies and sectors than the 50-es törvény. Some of the affected companies, for example, in the food industry or domain registrars, don't have a clue about the requirements and they are totally afraid. So I try to make an easy checklist. Hopefully, everyone is after the registration and already identified and classified their systems as well. The hard thing, besides the gap analysis that all the consultants require clients to pay a lot of money for, is to set up and operate a normal framework for compliance and risk management. It's not about downloading sample contracts or upgrading Windows XP. It's about administrative, logical, and physical measures applied to the reality of the given company, not applied to that group of companies whose headquarters is in Germany or France, and really important big guys in Germany or France dictate what should be made in this small operation. It's about checking the local systems, checking the local threats, and try to find a cure for them. So, as you said, one of the most important things is to have supply chain security. Like ESG, because of the global supply chains, the legislature realized that there's a big threat coming from that side.
There is a supply chain attack, so it's very crucial to implement control measures which address the supply chain risks. Jumping back to the former slide, when we talk about the classification of IT system in Hungarian EIR, tehát elektronikus információs rendszer, has to be based on risk assessment, which means that it's not as exercise when we getting together and have a list of system and okay, this SAP system will be basic, for example, but it has to be after risk assessments. Get together, ask the CEO, ask the CEO and IT managers and the business owners as well, how he's feel about the system, what are the risks which are affecting. And at the end of this exercise, we will have a list of system classified in the specific class.
Companies affected by this NIS2 directive, I heard the audit fee will be based on the number of IERs, elektronikus információs rendszert. And I see some interesting approach that they want to group together these IERs to pay less. So the question is, because I don't really see it regulated well, is there any possibility to group together IERs based on functions, or we should go deep into the asset list, like you said, talk with the CEO and make it as granular as we can? What is the best approach?
The one thing that they have very special, they develop their formula, how they will calculate the fee. This is totally mess because I'm not a mathematician. Yes, we asked exactly the same question from our executive from the STFH. The lady said it's possible, but I'm not sure that at the end of the day it will help. But I really agree with you because I'm like the simplicity. And if, for example, we have a web partner portal, so web applications could be logically to group web application in one group, and then if it's in the same infrastructure, sits on the same infrastructure, it's logical to handle it as one group. So I agree with you, but we will see after the first audits.
I would add that in the automotive industry, TISAX is the buzzword, which is an English word, not Hungarian. The approach of TISAX is different from these two. Realized for many clients that they just have different small systems under TISAX. It requires a different approach, a different mindset, and it makes life if the two compliance are made in parallel.
And you mentioned TISAX or TISAX, so which is based on ISO 27001 control. So if you have an information security management system in place, you will be very lucky if you are obliged to NIS2. STFH, the governing authority of NIS2 in Hungary, advise also to have an information security management system based on ISO 27001. So it doesn't matter which kind of control framework we use, at your company. STF has identified ISO 27001 and NIST 853 as a good framework to comply with NIS2.
We also have really high sanctions. The real threat would be the stop of producing, the stop of the company, and the associated face losing. The measures must be approved and overseen by the head of the organization, aware of that, and should beware of not complying. Another bunch of unsolicited tips. All relevant companies should be compliant for at least more than a month or less. As I said, group level policies are not enough. Specific local measures should be made and tailored to the reality, and no sample policies, no advice from fortune tellers, hairdressers, neighbors, whatever, which is quite common in reality. It's not accepted. Compliance is not only about IT work, it's a combination of IT and legal knowledge. It's a good thing to team up with IT people who have a different mindset than lawyers. So, and last but not least, there would be an audit obligation. According to the new legislation before Parliament, the contracting phase would be postponed until the end of March, which originally was the end of December. So each client wanted to contract all the lucky people who were admitted as auditors. There are different levels of auditors. Some are authorized to do the audit of basic things. Some can do more. The audit fees are, at least to my knowledge, not.
Sorry to interrupt again. This is also something that I don't really understand. That for example, I have a client, and these risk levels that we have to categorize are different. Some of them are normal, some of them are high. What is the case when you have several different categories, but there are auditors that are only obliged to audit the normal level? So I have to contract with two different auditors, or I cannot contract with those who has only normal levels, because in my experience in life, there are no companies with only normal and no high or critical level of risks.
I think it's practical to contract with only one auditor company, because who has the higher capability, quality to audit not only the basic, but the higher classified systems as well. It's good to have only one team. It's very crucial, because if you contract with two different companies, that you have two parallel projects who will ask almost the same questions from the same IT team, which is waste of time and effort.
Yes, I agree. What I really wonder then, what is the meaning of companies with only normal obligation? Because they won't get any work. This is the only case. There are higher or normal, etc. So we cannot really contract with them, in my opinion.
My opinion is that most companies would like to categorize themselves and their system into the basic level. So this is with the STFA, the authority advised them informally as well. I discussed with some executives at some conferences, they advise it, but this is not official. So if you ask them, they will never advise it not officially. So that's why by my opinion, there will be a huge number of organizations which categorize themselves to basic level. And after the first audit, there will be raising maybe advice for raise themselves. So that's why I think the auditor companies who just have a license only for basic audits will have a lot of work at the first year.
Yes, and one more practical point. As auditing itself would not be a good business, some of the auditors, when you approach them, they say that, okay, but only if we can do the preparation for the compliance, which I consider that it's a conflict of interest, because in case of normal world auditors, like financial auditors, whoever makes the books and records cannot be an auditor. So hopefully the regulator or the supervisory authority would change this practice, but this is what it is now. So the last bunch of unsolicited tips are the most important, at least for me. We should change the mindset of ourselves and our people, feel the opportunity in the legislation and the bunch of rules. It's not about doing the paperwork, being good on the surface. It's about being resilient and think about how to get competitive advantage over our competitors on the market. So, if you have any questions or
Just one, I think I would like to add. I agree with. We have to put the employees out of their comfort zone to face the risks valid to the specific organization and what are the risks what we are facing as an employee as well. So that's why raising awareness is very important, by my opinion. And on the other hand, organize lab exercises, as we heard before in the former presentation, is also important. And I think it's raising the executive awareness about what we can gain at the end of the day by implementing these kind of standards and frameworks. Of course, we will have more resilient nature. I mean, the security level will raise on a level where we can easily find the incident and the bad actors. We can easily identify. This is just one example. So, thank you very much.
adding to that, it's not a fire drill. Incidents are more common than fires at the workplace. And everyone should be prepared to realize the costs and possible issues associated with it and have the right mindset. We can see the whole picture. We can say that if we are making a digital transformation or want to implement AI, we should think ahead. We should also think about how to be in compliance with cybersecurity, how to raise awareness, build our walls, and furthermore have a holistic approach and take into consideration data protection, sectoral regulations, and employees, as well as supply chain. Thank you.
And last but not least, we have to know our assets, know our data, what we have to defend. Thank you very much. Track today is about the hands-on AI practical tools and strategies for AI-based defense. Our panelist is Mr. Andrew Warfy. He's a leading authority on AI-driven defense solution whose work focuses on applying cutting-edge AI technologies to address modern defense challenges. The floor is yours.
Thank you for the introduction. Let's jump into this. I hope I can tell you some interesting facts and give some insights. Last time we talked about the attacker perspective of AI, how AI can be weaponized. Today, we will talk about how AI can be used in defense, in strategy, and what kind of tools we can use, which consist AI. So let's see what is our agenda. We will do a short introduction to get some context on how AI shapes this industry, at least in my opinion. Then we will see how we use AI in defense, see some tools, some examples, and some practical uses on how everybody can use it to enhance their security posture. And then, if everything is right, we will see some practical tasks that everybody can do. If you are interested, then you can do even on your own phone and just to experience how you can use it and what are the use cases. Okay, so let's jump into this. As we all know, there is an increasing volume of threats and attacks on the web, and AI is more and more prevalent in these attacks. Techniques are also rapidly evolving. Some defensive measures that work in the past, no, they don't work anymore because maybe we all used to the typical phishing emails where we can easily say, okay, this is from the Nigerian prince and we don't care, it's not a problem. But today it is very hard to even notice that we are under attack. And the last driven force is that there is a very big lack of security personnel. So this is that kind of big shortage that now using some automatization is a must. Okay, before we jump into the defense, let's see again some dark side of the AI. So even for defenders, it can be a good tool, but for attackers, it can be a very powerful weapon. AI future emerged in the last few years. We see a big spike in the volume of attacks because every hacker can also use, for example, ChatGPT or large language models, and they are integrating it to their own purpose. This one example for this is social engineering attacks and deepfakes. Maybe you all know that there are some videos on the internet where somebody talks, but maybe these people doesn't even exist. So you cannot believe your own eyes, your own perception, and these are the threats that we must prepare against. Also, writing malwares with AI is much more it's much more easy because you can make it change its own code. For example, you can make it a polymorph malware very easily, and you can easily evade these defense mechanisms and anti-malware solutions. Just like the scaling and automation of these attacks, you can also use AI for finding vulnerabilities. There are even AIs now that can do a pen test. Lucky for us, because we want our job as pen testers, we still need it, but we see a big change in this. Maybe in the next years, we will not use our regular tools, but we have to use AI because it's much more effective. It's now there. We are now there. And as we talked about in the last session, supply chain attacks are more and more prevalent, and AI makes a big part in this. So what is our conclusion? Smart attackers need smart defenders. So let's go into the bright side. But before we go into the bright side, there are some risks that we must think about when we apply these AI solutions into our systems. More and more companies try to integrate AI solutions inside their own defense tactics, not just defense, but their business flows, etc. But what most of them doesn't know that there are a lot of risks of using AI, because AI is just software like everything else. It can be hacked, it can be vulnerable, it can be used for malicious purposes. One regular way to hack, for example, a large language model is prompt injections. There are some limitations. For example, you cannot make ChatGPT do hate speech or make you a malware or an exploit code. But there are some possibilities, like injection techniques, that you can use to lift these boundaries and use it for malicious purposes. Yes, these prompt injections is very hard to defend against. So if you are thinking about to make your own LLM, large language model, then this is also something that you must think about, because you have to protect. Other one is the data poisoning, but jailbreaking and supply chain vulnerabilities are also present. And something that I can say it's a risk. It's not like a cybersecurity risk, but something that we must also think about, that maybe we are beginning to be over reliant of AI. I see a lot of companies that make their all of their documentation with ChatGPT. If there is a question, they ask ChatGPT. When there is a programming task, they write it with ChatGPT and just accept it. It is true because it is smarter than me. Then he must be right. He is the AI. But this is not always. In most cases, it's not true. So you cannot be over reliant on AI. But don't let this discourage you from using it for good purposes. Let's see how we can use it. It is also a very powerful tool in the hands of the defenders. You can use it multiple ways, and I collected some examples here. Cyber threat intelligence is something that is very hard to grab on in most companies, at least here in Hungary. I don't really see examples where IT departments do this, but it is very important, because how to protect against something that you don't know? You must know your enemy, and this is very lacking. I see the reason behind this, because it is not that easy to know where to look. There are a lot of information on the internet. Some of them are useful, some of them not. If you have an AI in your hand, then you can work through this big volume of data and select the important parts. So for cyber threat intelligence, I think AI is very good. There are options for better authentication. I think it's more or less self-explanatory. It can enhance this technology a lot. Next is the phishing detection and prevention. As I said, now we are facing AIs. So just 2 days ago, I received a letter or an email from a big company. They wanted to sign a contract with me. I know them. I know the people who sent me this. Everything was fine, only the attachment was a bit suspicious. But it was perfect in Hungarian. The email was spoofed. The funny thing is that I also educate other people about cyber awareness, and I was not sure that this is an attack, but I was suspicious, and I just checked the IP address where this email came from. I just dipped into this attachment, and it was malware, of course, but it was from some far eastern country, but it was perfect in its language. It is very scary, I think. AI can help to pinpoint these small details for somebody who is not that used to this kind of attacks. Using AI for for checking these phishing or emails can be also a very good line of defense, because otherwise it would be a big problem. There are other risks associated with using AI for this, because data protection and confidential emails. So I don't say this is the best approach, but it can be a very good tool. The other point is vulnerability management. There are different kind of vulnerabilities, as we all know, because we just do a vulnerability assessment and get a lot of CVE IDs, but this is not all the vulnerabilities. There are vulnerabilities associated with peoples and process. So an assessment with AI to see the big picture, I think something like an LLM can be a good asset here also. What I see a lot of practical use, and some of my clients already integrated into the pipeline, the AI, is the source code analysis. Checking the source code for possible vulnerabilities, for possible bad practices that they just don't understand.
Sorry to interrupt you. This is very good point, the source code analysis. Because we already mentioned NIS2 several times today, and one of the main requirements of NIS2 is the source code check. And by my opinion, most of the companies, even big enterprises, forget to do anything about source code analysis, just doing the basic code analysis, which is not by default, not security analysis, but have some security checks. But the IT testers and doing these kind of things, but not really focused on security. I think is very important. Just wanted to emphasize this point.
I also agree, because security testing of the source code is more or less handled with the functional testing of the source code. They just check in this static code analysis if it's work. There are some rules, for example, MISRA rules, that can be applied to this source code analysis. It's not really inside the context. So I think an AI can help to understand the bigger context. For example, there is a common practice, they just comment out some blocks, or they just make some warnings disappear with opting it out. But this is a problem in the culture, and I think an AI can highlight this. Okay, then the next one is behavioral analytics. For example, insider threats. We protect our perimeters. We protect our servers. We buy expensive firewalls and say, okay, the walls are thick enough and they are high enough. But what about insider threats? And not just insider threats, but for example, a compromised user, a compromised computer. We expect from our users that they behave in a normal way, don't exfiltrate data, etc. But what if something bad happens and the attacker is inside our behavior of this user from the behavior of the past? Something may be changed, and an AI, by analyzing large data and thinking the context, what changed, it can help pinpoint these insider threats or compromised users. There are also some unknown attack vectors. Maybe we are all vulnerable, but we just don't know it, because there are no tools for us to see the unknown. For example, a regular vulnerability assessment tool. It uses the CVE database. It just finds the vulnerabilities that are reported, that are existing. But what about those that are not reported yet, the 0 days? Something happens, but we cannot say how, because we don't know the vulnerability. In my opinion, this is one of the cases where AI can come very handy. Maybe at the end, we will see some practical task what can help in this situation. Log analysis As security analysts, we do a lot of log analysis. But what log to collect? What are the important things that we must check? What are the possible alerts we can implement? This is also a challenge for some of us because sometimes we keep a very big system with a lot of logs and a lot of events. What can happen? To see it through and see the big picture and to pinpoint if there is some intelligence behind this log analytics can come very handy. We are also in Hungary, these two companies that are affected by it has this incident response obligatory for the government body. So if there is an incident, they must report it. But how to report if we don't have the tools to find if we had an incident? Yes, there are some obvious cases like ransomwares. You can say that, okay, I cannot reach my system, but there are more sophisticated attacks. Just in experience from me, there are some attacks that came into the light after the initial attack for years later. I see some attacks where they say, okay, we got a ransomware. What happened? The attackers were inside the machine for 2 years and they didn't know it because they didn't have the tools for checking it. And yes, cyber awareness, also a topic of NIS2. It can be hard for a lot of companies to make a good cyber awareness strategy. AI can help you in a lot. For example, by making good course thematics and even the training materials it can do for us, and also simulating phishing attacks. It's just like self-defense. You can defend yourself only if you have some practical experiences in self-defense, for example, in the street. It is also true in the cyber world. You must have some practical experiences. You must feel it when you are in a targeted attack. And this is where AI can help you. There are obvious AI tools. We are not just talking about LLMs, but other tools like natural language processing. It is most commonly used for email filtering or phishing detection, machine learning for anomaly detection, and predictive statistics. I've seen a lot of tools, some well-known and not well-known, like EDS and EPS using machine learning to learn how an attack looks like. And also, in the incident response process, there can be also some automated tools. For example, LLM can be useful here because you have to generate a lot of reports. You have to alert the users. There must be somebody who answer your questions. So it can be helpful if you have a colleague or an AI who can do it and check and tell the others what happened, helps you to investigate. Okay, so threat detection. As I said, AI models can analyze a lot of network traffic and look for anomalies. It is just like your basic EDS, EPS, for example, but much more because maybe there are some events that are stealthier and harder to detect, and AI can help you flag these events and stop it in its track. But there are some known tools. I know CrowdStrike is very well known for multiple reasons. There are also the Darktrace. Yes, they are maybe not the cheapest, but they using AI for years now, and they are very, very refined. Email security, reading through emails, checking for language patterns, or even behavioral differences. It can also help. There were some examples in real world. For example, it is very common for attackers to impersonate some of our colleagues, for example, our boss or IT department or somebody from it, and send a message for us. And I had a colleague. He was head of the IT department, and he usually had a lot of typos in his emails. Sometimes it was not even readable because he just didn't like typing, which is kind of interesting for an IT department head. But we just used to that he make these mistakes a lot. And when there was an impersonation attempt and the attacker wrote in his name in perfect language, it was very suspicious. Maybe it was an obvious case, but there could be other cases where the differences are not that easy to pinpoint. AI can help in this, even analyzing possible malicious attachments. So yes, for AI application, I just wrote that we can use AI or ChatGPT for simulating these attacks and train our personnel to defend against them. Incident response, yeah, I think I covered this. It reduces a lot of time, and in incident response, time is a very, very important factor. Using automation and something that could think in context, it can help a lot to be in time. So if you are thinking on how you can include AI in your strategy, incident response is a very, very good way to start. Yes, and talking about strategy, I think we covered some possibilities and risks. There are also many creative ways to use AI, like raising awareness by simulating sophisticated social engineering attacks. But what I see a lot, and back to NIS2, you have to make a lot of documentation, regulations, risk analysis, um, uh, plans what to do, how to implement the controls. And it needs a lot of writing. And I see a lot of companies using AI for this. I cannot say that this is the best approach. Maybe it's not. But I can imagine other very harrowing tasks where you have to present a lot of documentation in time. And using AI can help you in this also. I think, aside from source code analysis, this is one of the most common ways that companies nowadays include AI in cybersecurity. As a cybersecurity engineer, I conducted a lot of security policies for a lot of companies, and I just tried out ChatGPT, how it can cope with this. And I can say it was a very good result. So for companies that don't have the right personnel to do this, using ChatGPT or other LLMs to make these policies is better than nothing. By using it, it enables a lot of things. There is something I think I didn't mention. Last time, my presentation was more theoretical, and I wanted to make some hands-on experience for you if you still have your energy with something that you can do on your phone. Everybody is familiar with ChatGPT? Okay, I see a lot of yes. So you know that you can just use it on your phone. I just bring you to small cases. I'm just curious how you would tackle these tasks or cases. One thing is, if you can just grab your phone, I don't think that we will make a big round and everybody do and say its results, but just to have some experience. There is one case. Maybe you are familiar with honeypots. Are you familiar with honeypots? I think it is not a very well-known approach in Hungary, or at least I don't see it a lot of times. But as I coming from a hacker background, something that I'm really, really afraid when I'm in a pen test is getting into a honeypot. So we can say hackers afraid of honeypots. Why we don't use this? And to see how easy we can do a honeypot with ChatGPT, one task is to ask ChatGPT to make a honeypot as credible as it can be. try to refine it with different prompts. You just ask it to do it for you. But is it credible? Think inside the head of an attacker and say, okay, you will fall, you would fall for this. I think it is a very good practice, and you can implement it inside the tool with some AI connectivity. You can make a working honeypot very easily with this. The other is to ask ChatGPT to formulate a very convincing phishing email for educational purpose. Then ask it to highlight the suspicious part of it. So, as I said, ChatGPT can easily analyze a lot of data and see these little differences that maybe a human cannot see. This is also a good use case. You can include this in your defense strategy, some checks for these mails, and to make an alert. Or you can do it as part of an awareness training where you can just write emails with it and check your colleagues if they opened it, if they open the attachment, or if they can pinpoint suspicious parts. These are just two examples, but if you have any other ideas or creative use cases that you can think of, I am very curious to hear your opinion, how you would use ChatGPT or any AI. Maybe we will have a patent later. I think this was from my side. I think it's more or less theoretical because the participation is not that big, but I encourage everybody to try out and see what he can do with this tool and how it can enhance your security posture. You can do a lot of things with it, so be creative. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. It was a very interesting presentation. I would like to ask one question. So what is your opinion? How can an organization seamlessly integrate AI tools into their existing infrastructure while ensuring scalability and security?
It is the billion-dollar question because I think most of the companies are just trying to figure out the way. But nevertheless, it is a very big challenge because the risks, as a security personnel, I see a lot of risks in integrating AI in working operations. To answer your question, when this AI thing came up, everybody was very, very enthusiastic and jump into it and try using it. And they don't really understand how it works, what is it good for. And there are a lot of maybe not optional use cases. And when something cannot be solved with it, then this enthusiasm is going low and they just abort the project. But I think they can integrate it if they think their own process and see and understand what it is capable of. It is not capable of everything. It's just a tool. It's just something that they can use. It won't solve the world problems, but to integrate it in a reality way, basically.
Okay, thank you. And another question is, for example, if you would be a chief security executive of a big enterprise, and the CEO would give you a huge amount of money, and in order to implement based or AI supported security system or framework, and you could choose only one or at maximum two use cases, what would be these use cases where would you use AI in security operation?
Yes, I could say that this is also a billion-dollar question because it is also not very easy. There are a lot of options, lot of possibilities, and to make a good decision is not always easy. What I would do if I had to, and I don't give him my resignation at that moment, yes, the risk analysis. what are my biggest risks? What are my most important assets that I want to protect? For example, maybe incident response is my weak point. I don't have that kind of possibility to analyze the logs fast enough, and I don't really see what happens in my system. Then it would be my priority. If there are other use cases, for example, I'm a big company with a lot of people, a lot of fluctuation, etc., maybe some behavioral analytics would be my biggest merit, because maybe this is all my biggest risk, the fluctuation, the people, the insider threats. So before I do this decision, I would really like to see what is my risks and what are my assets and decide according to it.
Okay, thank you very much. And last questions. Some people think that using cyber weapons is okay in the fifth domain of warfare, the cyber domain. So what do you think about it?
The cyber warfare is very much integrated now inside conventional warfare, and it is a very big problem. They say that it is okay to use because it doesn't kill people, for example, but it is not the case. Just check some examples from the last year. There was a big sabotage against I think, the Russians, the Polish train system, and they stopped 20 trains in its track. So we can see big this damage can be, because there are not just cyber systems, but there is also cyber physical systems. There are some systems that are very safety relevant, cars, power plants, etc. They are also they can be also affected by cyber attacks, and we see a lot of examples for this. It can also lead to death or personal damage, or even a disaster. So I think now a cyber weapon is very similar to lethal weapons, and you cannot really say that it is not lethal, because it is.
Most importantly, some Ministry of Defenses of several NATO countries think that cyber attack, so the retaliation could be a physical attack on the country who initiated that cyber attack. So it could easily lead to a real physical world as a counterattack.
Yes, yes.
Thank you very much for your presentation, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you.